Hello, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Trust everyone has been doing well, and I want to believe everyone is anticipating of what Authorite is having for you again. If you are here with us, kindly show some emoji, show some comments. Let us know you are here so that we can kickstart the trading. Let's have it. Let's have it in the comment section. Yeah, hello, Ibrahim. Good evening. So, oh yeah. So we can have Ibrahim. If you are also joining us, great, great. You can see Miss Belu Latifa. So you tell us where you are joining us from, your name and where you are joining us from, so that we can start. We are talking about class security today, and we. Hi, Abdul Majid. Please tell us where you are joining us from in the comment section. All right, great. All right, great. So we are starting and we are kickstarting the event of today, which is Cloud Security 101, protecting your cloud assets. I'm so happy to be here today. Abalaji Abdulrahman, as has been showing on your screen. And we have an amazing speaker who will be sharing more insight about the topic of today in person of Miss Diogo Ani Ekwe. She's ready to give us value. She's ready to give us insight about what security means. Even if you are a beginner, we have created this training such that you are taking something home, and definitely no knowledge is a waste. Okay, we can have Mr. Ibrahim from Osun State. That's amazing. Uh, Abdulmajid is saying you can't see the video, but you can hear my voice. Yes, you just have to hear my voice, and you have to just hear what the speaker is saying. So, immediately I introduce the speaker. I'll big her up on stage, and we can then get the value she has for us for today. So, I don't want to waste much of our time. We believe we'll be having more viewers as time goes on. I would like to share more before I go to call on the speaker. I would like to give a brief overview of the topic and give a bow of who the speaker is. Now, the topic cloud security, what does it mean? Because we understand that cloud is the delivery of on-demand IT resources as we know over the internet. It is then important that we know how to secure the cloud. We have to protect the environment. We have to protect what we are storing on the cloud. So if we are unaware of this, knowledge, we are unaware of the tools that we can use to protect our cloud. Definitely, the cloud will be susceptible to attacks, and we will also be vulnerable, exposing our data to the public, which is not very okay enough. So today we'll be calling on Ms. Diogo Anikwe. She will be giving a lot of insight about what cloud security is all about and how we can protect our cloud assets. So if you're just joining, you're welcome. And we have a lot to give to you today. So who is Ms. Diogo Anikwe? Ms. Diogo Anikwe is an information security analyst. She has been helping organizations to protect their systems and data from cyber threats. And she focuses on finding and fixing vulnerabilities, monitoring security incidents, and ensure that security controls work effectively across enterprise environments. She's passionate about staying ahead of evolving threats and creating safer digital spaces for businesses and users alike. So if you are glad to hear that bow from our speaker, can you show some emojis? Let's show some emojis. Great, great. Okay, we can have Miss Valentine. Valentine, can you tell us where you're joining us from? Yeah, great, great. That's a very great bow from Miss Dioga Nikwe. She's full of insight, and I believe she will be giving us value in today's webinar series. Right? As we're all aware, this is a 3-day webinar series, and this is our first topic. You join us on Monday and Tuesday, where we'll be also talking about prompt engineering. Prompt engineering has been more of like a programming language, and if you are not good at prompting, you won't be able to get the best from your AI. Now that Monday class will definitely shed more light on how we can prompt effectively, how we can engineer our AI to give us the best results, and that's just by the way. And also we are also having this series on Tuesday, and we'll be discussing on DevOps and automation. And I'm very sure everyone will be expecting that. So I don't want to waste much of our time. I would like to call on Ms. Joga Nikwe to go ahead and give us what she has for us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Abolaji. Please, if you can hear me and if you can see me, kindly let me know so I can proceed. Abolaji, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me from the comment?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you
Um,
so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you to you and your team for having me here today. I am honored to be here today to talk about one of the topics I'd like to talk about, and it is no other thing than security. And today, I am pleased to be talking about cloud security, security on the cloud. And in today's session, we are going to be looking at some of other things or a bunch of stuff that we do not know, especially for beginners who haven't worked in security or cloud security before. Some of the things that we do as security professionals to help our clients protect their workload on the cloud. And today's topic, like you said, is Security 101, and it is about protecting cloud assets. In today's session, we are going to be looking at introduction to cloud security. Why do we need cloud security? We are going to be looking at the shared AWS shared responsibility model. We look at identity and access management. We look at data protection in AWS. We talk about network security on the cloud. We talk about monitoring and threat detection. We talk about best practices. In all of these measures, what are the best practices? Combining all of them together, and we take your questions and have our key takeaway before we leave. And he has talked about me. My name is Diogo. I'm an information security analyst and I work for an MSSP. So, yeah, thank you very much for having me, and just let's dive in. And we are going to be talking about security. Why does security matter? From the screen, cloud security is all about protecting your digital assets, your data, your application, your services that live on the cloud. Anything that you do for your on premise security, when you do it for your cloud environment, it is basically cloud security. Whatever efforts, you're going to be using lots of tools. I always tell people that, especially people who don't quite understand the cloud, I just begin by telling them that when you use AWS, you're not just using a service, you're using a tool, because all the tools you see in in AWS, the IAM tool. IAM is a service and it is a tool as well, meaning that you can, without using AWS, you can use the tool IAM from AWS. EC2 is a tool as well. S3 is a tool as well. So you don't need to be a full cloud person to go use a service on AWS. All you just need to do is use a certain tool. Now, when you talk about cloud security, every tool you use, even if it is AWS managed tool, it is a third party tool, every policy your organization makes, every process they put in place, everybody that is involved in ensuring that the confidentiality of your data and your cloud environment, the integrity of your data, your application, and your environment, the availability of your data, your application, your environment, everybody who comes together to make sure that it is safe and secure are part of, or all these mechanisms or technologies are part of cloud security. Now, why does security matter? We're going to be looking at a lot of reasons why we think security matter in AWS. The basic one is data protection. The data that you have on AWS, now you can use AWS for data analytics. And before you can use AWS for data analytics, data must have been collected. For your applications that are plugged into AWS, you have the databases, you have S3. For your applications that go through data lake, everything that you put on AWS, it has to be protected. That is your data. And data is a very critical asset in security because that is what the hackers, or what like we call them in cybersecurity, we call them threat actors. That is one of the things that they are looking for. It's just like the honey that the bees are trying to find. That is what data is. So when you want to approach cloud security, the one of the reasons why you should do that is data protection. You have to make sure that unauthorized people or people who do not have access do not access the data you have in the cloud. You want to make sure that there are no losses. You want to make sure that sensitive data is not accidentally exposed onto the public or onto a third party. What do I mean by a third party? It may not be in the public, but someone who does not or who should not see a particular data once someone has seen it, the data has been breached. So you want to make sure that your data is properly protected. And the second reason why cloud security matters is compliance requirements. It helps organizations meet legal industrial regulations. You have companies in the Europe trying to meet the GDPR. You have companies in Nigeria trying to meet the NDPR. You have companies in the health sector trying to meet the hyper regulations. You have companies in the payment card industries trying to meet the PCI DSS regulations. And if your data is not properly secured on the cloud, you won't be able to meet all these compliance frameworks, and you will lose credibility in your business because most people would approach you because you are certified of a certain compliance framework. And another reason is business continuity. When you face critical security issues, you are going to have an issue with business continuity because at the time when you are trying to solve or come out of a DDoS attack, for instance, your business is already down. At that point in time, you can't make money, you can't solve things for your customers, people can't access your business, they can't access your services, and at that point in time, your business is down. But when you have a very stringent cloud security framework, you are sure that even in the midst of security issues, your business is not in any way facing a downtime. And the fourth one is threat protection. When you are embracing cloud security, you are protecting yourself against any kind of cyber threats, against any kind of harm, ransomware, phishing, DDoS attack, malware, and all those good stuff. You are trying to, even an issue that comes with security misconfiguration, you're trying to ensure that all those issues are not going to be your case. Even if they eventually become your case, the impact is going to be at the barest minimum. The third one is the fifth one is access control. You want to make sure that only authorized people have access to your environment, only authorized devices, only authorized services, only authorized tools have access to your cloud resources. And another one is reputation management. When you embrace security in the cloud, you are going to be very far from data breach. There is this mantra we have in my company, and it goes like this. It says no organization can be entirely secure, but being more secure than others makes a lot of difference. If, for instance, I'm going to use a non-technical explanation to do this. If you live in a street and your neighbor has a house and the house is fenced, it is high, the fence is high, there are security cameras everywhere, there are security, not like security men that open the gate, like big time security. You have the police, you have armies there, and then there is another house close to it. That house does not have any security measure. When thieves come, they eventually would go to the one that has less security. And that is why it matters a lot in cybersecurity that you're secure. You're securing your reputation. No, nobody wants to do business with a company that has history of security breaches. They will lose their customers, they will lose their reputation and all those good stuff. And you also want to save cost. The cost of going through security breach, going through digital forensics, getting third party people involved, legal litigations and all those stuff is going to cost your business money. So if you just approach security from the onset, you stay away from all those issues. And scalability and flexibility. Once you have security in place, your business is going at all time at a 1000 all time high. All the time you're scaling, you're not having to come down, go up, come down because there is one issue blocking the way. There is no back and forth and all those good stuff. And you can always go through innovation. You can innovate as much as possible because the AWS has provided an environment for you to deploy your workload, your applications, your data, and manage your users and all those stuff without having to think about how you will do it yourself. And all you need to do is just to take the best practices, and you can just be innovating every single day. Now, the next thing we are going to talk about is the shared responsibility model in AWS. We can't talk about security without talking about the part you as an individual would play and the part AWS would play on their own side to ensure that your environment is safe and secure. Now, from the screen, the AWS shared responsibility model outlines the division of security and compliance responsibilities that Amazon Web Service and between Amazon Web Service and the customer. It's just a division. What would you do? What will AWS do? And that is just what the shared responsibility model is. And on the side of AWS is going to give you security of the cloud. Now, another example to take this out of technology is you want to rent a house and you come to the house, you came to check out with the house with the agent or the real estate guy. You go to the house and you see that okay, the house is gated. hmm and in the apartment you want to rent, it has a door and it has a lock, and mostly at this age we all use iron doors, and it has iron doors, and you go to the window, there is a burglary proof on the window, and there is a maybe aluminum glass on the window as well, and you look up on the roof, there is no empty roof or there is no missing ceiling or empty coaches, and maybe there is a gateman house and maybe the house is in an estate, meaning that there is an additional security. That is the security of the cloud, for instance. AWS is going to ensure that the cloud environment is well tight, it is highly secure on your own path. Let me also use that explanation from house hunting. Now, on your own path as a user, when you move into the environment or when you move into the apartment, you should not leave your doors open. You should not take out the doors. You should not leave it open. You should not bring bad friends, because if you start bringing bad people into your environment or into your apartment, when anything happens, there's no way you can guarantee that something will not even happen, because they are already in there because you brought them in. The landlord is not going to be held accountable, and that is what the shared responsibility model is between AWS and their customers. AWS ensures security of the cloud by giving you physical security where the data centers are. Their physical security is there. Their they have some other proof in case of natural disasters. They have their own disaster recovery. You have different data centers, you have different AZs, you have different regions. They have good hardware, they change the hardware, they have good networking, they have good facilities, they have global infrastructure, they have foundational services. They have patch management and maintenance to ensure that when you come in, it is safe. And then on your own part as a customer, what will you do? You have to manage access control. You have to give least privileges. Make sure that nobody in your team has more permission than they require to do their job. You have to make sure that the tools or the services that are doing things on your behalf, they do not have more privilege than needed. You have to ensure that your data is encrypted. AWS encrypts data on S3 by default, and then customers can still go ahead to use their own personal or managed custom encryption method to encrypt their data. Configure your Properly configure your environment, patch your EC2 instances, your container and services, and all those stuff. Enable monitoring and logging to make sure that if anything happens, you can be able to trace how it happened and find the root cause and prevent it from happening in future. And also, you have to use a particular compliance framework for the businesses in your industry to ensure that you are doing this within the confines of a framework that has been battle tested, tried and true, to ensure that you are well protected and you're safe. So what we are taking away from this is that AWS will just help you secure the entire environment, but what is inside the environment, what you put inside your cloud environment, you are the one who is going to make sure that they are safe and protected. And I think that is the essence of this session, by the way. And the next thing we have on the screen is identity and access management as a practice or as a tool for cloud security. Now, at the heart of AWS cloud security, the basic thing you want to talk about is identity and access management, because this is how you can control who does what in your environment and how they do it within your environment. So basically, identity and access management is a framework of policies, technologies, and processes that ensure that the right individual have the right access. Now, look at the keyword. The right individuals have the right access, the second keyword, to the right resources, the third keyword, at the right time, the fourth keyword, and for the right reasons, the fifth keyword. Meaning that if the right individual has the right access to the wrong resources at the right time for the right reasons, you have breached security. All these clauses must be checked before you can ensure that you have, on the side of identity and access management, you have done everything that you should do to ensure that your cloud environment is secure and tight. So in AWS, you can use IAM to securely control who has access or who gets access to your environment. IAM, like I said, is your first line of defense. The first thing you do when you get into AWS, when you create your AWS account, is identity and access management. And now, what is the key goal of identity and access management? Like I said in the definition, you use it to give the right access to the right people, the right resources at the right time for the right reasons. That brings us to this: what is the key goal? First, use it for authentication. And by authentication, I mean who has access to this. How can you verify that? Okay, for instance, if I say that, okay, me, For instance, I work for Autorite. For instance, I'm just giving an example, and Autorite gives me an IAM account or an IAM user name and password, and I want to get into AWS. I need to authenticate, meaning that I have to, for instance, my name is Diogo, and I have to use my email to sign in, the email that the identity and access management has been issued to. I have to use it, number one, to sign in. And how will AWS know that I, Diogo, I am the one who is signing in? It is through my password, and eventually it is through an MFA, which is the second factor authentication that will also prove that, oh, at the end of the day, it is me. So that, for instance, if someone who by chance runs into my email address does not go to AWS account in proxy think that AWS might think that, okay, I'm the one, but then at the end of the day I'm not the one. So you use authentication to verify the user or the system that is trying to connect or do certain stuff in AWS. And the second one is, another key goal is authorization. You use identity and access management to check the authorization or to check or control who is allowed to perform certain tasks or who is allowed to work on certain resources, to deploy certain resources, to delete or do anything within AWS. You want to be sure that they have the right permission to be able to do whatever that they are doing. Please, I'm not seeing the chat. If you can hear me, please, host, can you make some noise if you can still hear me? Let me be sure I'm not talking to myself. Abolaji, are you there? Can anyone hear me? Okay, let me just keep going. When he gets on, you should just say something. And the third goal is for accountability. You want to make sure that you are tracking what everyone is doing, you are logging, you are auditing what everyone is doing, who is logging in, what they are doing, to make sure that if there is any issue, you can be able to say this is where the issue came from and find mitigation actions and all the things that you have to do. And the next one is least privilege. Use it to limit or restrict access to users, give users access to resources that they only need, or the permissions they only need to do their job, or the resources they only need for their job and nothing else. And what are the core components of an IAM? We have users, that is humans, who would want to log into AWS. You and I, individual accounts, you want to create account, you have 10 people in your team, those people are the users. And we have groups. You can have a collection of users. For instance, if you have HR department, you have admin, you have data science and engineering, you have operations team, and in each of these team there are 3 or 4 or 5 person dispatched in each of this team, and they need to connect to your AWS. What you would do is, instead of they all have their AAM permissions and accounts, instead of giving them individual permissions, since they belong to the same department, you can just give them one permission based on the group that they are in. This means that everybody in that groups gets the same kind of permission. You just have a more granular feel or look of the IAM or the permissions that they need. And you have roles. Roles are just a way to give different identities, different kind of permissions. Or, for instance, another way to give or another way to describe role is, if you have a certain service, for instance, Lambda, or you have a certain third-party tool, maybe any of the workload protection platforms or any service within AWS that need to, for instance, you need S3 to connect to EC2 to get data in real time, or you need one service to talk with the other service. You can only do this via an IAM role. So this service, whenever they need to do or perform a task, what they will just do is to assume the role that you have designated to be able to do that. When they try to assume a role, they get a token, a temporal token for a period of time, pending on the time that they will perform that particular action, and they're able to just perform the action and the role and revert back to their original self. So based whenever you want another service or you want another tool to work in your AWS environment, to use roles and policies. Policies are just JSON documents that define permissions. For users, you want to define what they have to do, what they are allowed to do, what they are not allowed to do, the services they are allowed to touch, or the roles they are allowed to perform. You do that with policies. And another way or another IAM best practice. I think okay, we don't have any other thing on IAM. So one of the IAM best practices, once you create an AWS account, the first thing you do is to create an MFA for the root account. Every AWS, a fresh AWS account is a root account. You want to create an MFA for that. And when you are done doing that, the next thing you want to do is to create an IAM. Perhaps you want to have an IAM as an admin, the owner of the account, or the sole manager of the account. You can create an IAM with an admin role, or if admin is going to be too broad for you, you can create a role and an IAM account with just limited permissions for the things you need to do with the account, and also enforce identity and access management, enforce MFA, sorry, for that IAM account that you just created. And just make sure that every user that tries to log in have MFA. All the IAM users, they have MFA for their account, and rotate your MFA keys, rotate access keys, rotate secret access keys, rotate your password, and explicitly deny. AWS does that by default anyway, but just leave it as explicit deny, except maybe when you need resource to grant a permission, you can just grant a permission, but just make sure that everything is denied within your environment by default. And logging is very, very important. And now moving on to data security and S3. Data is, like I said, data is the gold mine in security. Everything we do is to protect data, to protect assets, holding this data, to protect assets, processing this data, transferring this data, and everything about data. So now in AWS, what is data protection? In the cloud, it refers to the strategies, the tools, and the controls used to safeguard data throughout the data lifecycle. Meaning that from the time you take the data, from the time you process the data, from the time you transmit the data from one location to the other, from the time you store this data, it has to be protected at all time. Everything we do about data protection to ensure that data is safe, to ensure that data is private, to ensure that data is recoverable in case of anything, human error, cyber attack, everything we do is data protection. And in AWS, the service that holds data or the service that is primarily concerned with data is Amazon S3. On the a higher level for applications, we have the database, but S3 does a lot, hosts different kinds of data, and we want to make sure that the confidentiality of data, meaning that data is kept private only for the authorized persons, and you also want to ensure that the data in your environment is not tampered with, and you also want to make sure that the data is available whenever is needed. Now, looking into key elements in data protection, confidentiality. And like I said, you want to make sure that data is confidential, no third parties, no unauthorized eyes, no unauthorized access is able to access the data you have stored on S3. And you want to make sure that it has integrity, meaning that the data can never be tampered with. If you have data the way it is, no alterations, no proof, no tamper, no nothing, no touching, no editing, just the way it is. And you also want to make sure that it is available. Availability is key in security, and the way we have it on physical security, that is also the way we have it on the cloud. You want to make sure that data is available at all time. And looking at Amazon S3 security overview, what do we do? How can we ensure security of S3 or our data that is stored in S3. And that's the first thing with access control. You want to use identity and access management to ensure that users, services, only users and services that have access or that need access or that have the right to a data get that data whenever, only when they need it. That is what you do with access control and IAM. And then other things like making the data that is stored in the IAM private by default, no public. Even if you want to host a website on S3, please go through CloudFront. No public, direct public access to any data you have on S3. It is one of the first best practices when you are configuring your S3 buckets. And you also want to make sure that there is access control list. You also want to make sure that you use service control policies, especially if you have an AWS organization, to just deny or make policies for all the accounts within your management accounts. And the second one is data protection. What do we mean by this? Or sorry, data encryption. You have to encrypt data by default. The data you have stored on S3 is encrypted by default. You want to make sure that you use AWS managed keys. That is the keys that encrypts your data by default. Or based on the data you're storing and the compliance framework that the organization uses, you can use customer managed keys. You can enable client side encryption, and then in transit, when you want to send data from one service to the other, or you want to send data from AWS across the internet, or you want to send it to on-premise and you want to send it, once the data is in transit, ensure that it is encrypted with HTTPS or using the SSL or TLS framework in encryption. And you also want to make sure that data integrity is very important. That is, you want to ensure that, how do you ensure that data is not tampered with? And that is where we have data integrity with versioning. You want to ensure that you keep multiple versions of your data or of the objects you have in your S3 bucket. In case of any accidental deletion or accidental overwrites, you can always revert to the original one. And once data is tampered with, a new version of that data gets created. So you want to make sure that you have the data integrity and versioning enforced. And there's also MFA deletes. You want to make sure that anybody who tries to delete data, this is very key, especially when you have an unauthorized access. For instance, a hacker tries to hack into your AWS environment and they want to modify data or delete data or do anything with the data. They have to do it with an MFA. And because of the MFA, of course, the attacker will not have the MFA because they don't have your phone or they don't have your MFA tools. So it helps you to ensure that when you are not there, something is not happening behind the scene. And you also want to ensure monitoring and logging at all points in time. Ensure that everything that is happening within your environment is being monitored. And data backup and replication, like I talked about availability as a goal or as a key element of data protection in AWS. You want to make sure that data is always available. And how do you do this? The basic one is data backup. Back up your data, and then use replication, cross region replications. Make sure that for critical data, you have those data in more than one region, just in case there's downtime in US East 1, for instance, or in the region where you have it deployed initially, the data can still be available coming out from or to another region. And moving on, we are looking at network security in AWS. Please, if you can hear me, can you let me know? I'm just okay. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So, going back to network security in AWS, what is network security? Just the way it is with on-premise environments, that is also the same way it is in AWS. Network security in AWS involves protecting cloud-based network systems data from unauthorized access, misuse, or attacks. What do I mean by this? Everything, every tool you use, every configuration, every services that you have to ensure that the traffic coming to your AWS environment, especially EC2 instance, is controlled, it is monitored, it is safeguarded. You want to ensure that everything within your environment is well protected, and that is where the networking side comes in. AWS has a very granular layer of networking that helps to protect your data or helps to give you an isolation of your environment or of your data. All those tools, how do we use them? All those configurations, how do we make sure that, how do we use them to make sure that the issue that we have in our AWS environment does not come from our network? That is what network security is all about. And now, also, for network security, let me not forget to mention, just the way it is with S3, you have confidentiality, you have integrity, you have availability. That is the same way it is with network. You want to make sure that no unauthorized access within your AWS network. You want to make sure that there is no tampering of your network or on your network configurations. You also want to make sure that your network is always available, no downtimes. And you want to make sure that you use the AWS layered network architecture to ensure network segmentation. In that way, everything stay within where they're supposed to stay, and you will be sure that you won't have any kind of downtime or security issues. Now, what are the key services or the key tools that we use for network security in AWS? We have the Oga Bata Bata of all of them. That is the VPC. Within or with an AWS VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. With that, it gives you an isolated, customizable environment. Now, let's take for instance, you have 5 applications that you have deployed on AWS. All these applications can be in the same virtual network, or you have different departments, or you have different things, especially for large scale organizations. You have a lot going on in your environment. They can't all be in the same network. Within it is the same AWS organizations, but different networks within the AWS accounts. This helps you to isolate different workloads, different departments, and ensure that they have the proper network configuration that they need to function. And that is what the VPC does for you. And coming off of VPC, that is the general network, you have the security groups. The security groups are just like virtual firewalls that helps you to control inbound and outbound traffic of your EC2 instance. Your EC2 instances are very important. They are very delicate tools or delicate deployments you have in an AWS account, and you want to make sure that you only have the right traffic coming in, and filter out the wrong traffic both ways, both inbound or ingress coming in and outbound or egress going out of your environment. And the next one is the web application firewall. It is a tool, or for those in networking, it is a layer 7 network protection for AWS. You have applications running on AWS. You just make sure that the AWS firewall is used to ensure that issues like cross-site scripting attack, SQL injections does not come into your application. And you also have the AWS Shield, is a very advanced or standard DDoS protection for your AWS environment. For us in cybersecurity, we know about distributed denial of traffic as a cyber attack where there are lots of flood of traffic, millions of flood of traffic going into your environment, and it's trying to overwhelm your resources to the point that it goes unavailable, meaning that at that point in time users cannot be able to connect. And I know that we are running out of time, but let me just use another explanation to do this so it's good for us to understand. If we know about, how JAMB, NYSC, those peak periods where people are trying to register for JAMB or register for NYSC or trying to check their portal and all those stuff, most times the traffics are not going for those environments. For instance, this is what hackers can do. What they do is that they make your website unavailable for the real users by overflooding it with traffic. So Amazon Shield is a tool that helps you to protect your environment for those kind of attacks. It is very advanced, and it has a standard and it has a very advanced tiers of it. It is quite expensive though, but it does the work a lot. And then we have the VPC flow logs. This is a tool that helps you to capture details of traffic coming into the VPC. You want to capture the IP addresses, you want to capture where they are coming from, and you want to capture how they are moving within the virtual private cloud. It helps with audits a whole lot, and it helps you to filter out bad traffic as well. And now we have the Amazon Private Link. Amazon Private Link is just like a VPN, but it is an Amazon managed VPN service that helps you to have a private connection or have an anonymous connection between your workers, between your endpoints, your browsers, or whatever tools you guys work with in your environment, with the resources you have in Amazon. You just want to make sure that in case a hacker is trying to sniff or trying to, without your notice, there is something we call man in the middle attack or spoofing or sniffing. In case someone is watching your traffic, when you use private link, it further encrypts your traffic and makes it anonymous, such that if you go through the public internet, it will also be private. Like it won't be on the broadcast, or there's no way your real IP address is going to be seen, and all those extra layers of anonymity and protection. And we have another one, VPN or Amazon Direct Connect. This is a tool used for when you have an on-premise environment and you also have Amazon cloud environment, and you want to make sure that there is a safe and secure connection between your physical servers and AWS, your servers and AWS, you use Amazon Direct Connect. Again, when you also want to use, there's something we call site-to-site VPN. You want to connect two data centers at the same time. You use Amazon Direct Connect. And now, moving on to network security layers, like I told us, AWS has lots of network security layers that help us to ensure that we have a very granular, very deep network security within AWS environments. And we have the perimeter protection that AWS has provided for us. This is where you use network access control lists. You want to use VPCs, you want to use security groups. These are like firewalls to restrict traffic. The perimeter is just like a block within your AWS environment that helps you to filter out things on the internet and the things within your environment. And then we have network segmentation and isolation. This is where you have subnets. In a VPC, you can have private subnets, you have public subnets, you have your database in the private subnet, you have the EC2 instance in the public subnet, or the web server in the public subnet. And there is a more dedicated security configuration that you do with security groups to ensure that only the public subnet can go to the private subnet, because they need to talk to each other, because they are hosting the same application. And this just gives you network segmentation, and anybody coming from the outside on the internet cannot access the private subnet, because it is holding your database, it is holding some private resources that you have in your environment. And again, encryption in transit, you use tools like private link, direct connect, transit gateway to ensure that whenever there is, if for instance you need Amazon S3 to talk to an EC2 instance that is in a VPC, you need a transit gateway to be able to ensure that one service talks to another service securely, and private link for to have a anonymous private connection between your environment and the internet. And again, you keep seeing monitoring and logging. It is not negotiable. I'm a security person and I know, and even for an operations person, you also know, because you cannot do anything. You can't audit your environment. You can't know what has gone wrong if there is no monitoring. There's no way you know that. And monitoring and logging just helps you to ensure that at every point in time, all your resources, all your services that you have on AWS, they are following best practices, and you can always diagnose and find out issues and other things. And we have the actual part. This is where it concerns me as well as a security analyst, and this is the part of monitoring, threat detection, and incident response in AWS. And what does that mean when we talk about monitoring? I've been talking about monitoring a lot monitoring and logging, and this is the part where we look at it in detail. Monitoring, threat detection, and incident response are essential components of AWS security operations, not just AWS security operations, AWS cloud operations. You have anything that has to do with operations, just talk about monitoring. That is the only way you can find out, that is the only way you can know what is going on in your environment. What does monitoring mean? It is any way or any means that you continuously observe what is going on in your environment. You want to ensure that you are seeing the changes, you want to ensure that you are seeing the activities, you want to ensure that you are seeing every single thing. That is when you monitor. It's just like having a watchdog in your environment. The person monitors everything. And threat detection. How do you identify suspicious or malicious behavior within your environment? That is the threat detection part of it. And also, there is another part again for monitoring threat detection. Basically, use it for incident response. You want to ensure that whenever there is an issue, the monitoring tool has alerted or the threat detection tool has alerted. You want to make sure that whenever there is an issue, you can be able to respond to the incident. It can be security incidents, it can be just operational or performance incidents. And now, what are the key services in AWS or the key tools that we can use for monitoring? The first one is CloudWatch. CloudWatch helps you to track the metrics. You have your EC2 instance, you have your container services, you have all your configurations. You want to make sure that you are collecting logs. It goes into your EC2 instance to get logs, even inside the instance itself, not even based on the configuration. It goes in there to find out CPU usage, find out RAM usage, find out storage issues, find out any issue at all. So you can be able to diagnose and troubleshoot your errors or your issues to ensure that you do not have any kind of downtime. That is mostly what CloudWatch does. It does a lot more than that. It's a full-time service on its own. It allows you, you have your metrics, defined metrics, and all those good stuff. And then AWS Cloud Trail. I've been talking about auditing. AWS Cloud Tray is a tool that records every single thing you do. You log into AWS, you click on EC2, you click on S3, you configure S3, you upload on S3, you delete S3, any single thing you do on AWS from the point of login to the point of logout. CloudTrail is the tool that records it. It records them in form of API calls so that in any case or in anything that happens, you can go to CloudTrail to find out who did what, when, where, and how. And look at AWS config. AWS config is just like a tool that records all your configuration changes in your environment. It helps you to ensure that they are following best practices, and you can also use it to check your your security posture management. If you think you guys are not getting anything right, you can go to AWS config, and AWS have managed policies. You can also create your own policies that can help you to see that whenever a user, for instance, a user creates an EC2 instance, for instance, and in the security group, that user enabled SSH, which is port 22, and left it to 0000/0, which is anybody on the internet. If you have AWS config, AWS has a managed security policy there that can alert you. You can also create your own custom one. Those kind of things are bad security configurations, or what we call security misconfigurations, and AWS config is going to let you know the posture of all your security configurations, and you can use it to track all the services that you have running and how they are complying to certain compliance framework. And now we have guard duty. Guard duty is an advanced threat detection tool. It uses machine learning to feed both external threat intelligence into your AWS environment, meaning that, for instance, if you have guard duty enabled and I I try to log into your AWS environment, guard duty is going to use certain tools, or for instance, an IP address that has been flagged severally by threat intelligence tool, or something that looks like a threat in your environment. AWS is going to the guard duty is going to be the tool that will alert you, and it doesn't do this on its own. It's going to pull logs from CloudTrail, logs from VPC, logs from S3, just different places, and alerts you when it sees something that looks like a threat within your environment. And then we have AWS Security Hub. AWS Security Hub is a central single pane of glass within your AWS environment where you can pull all resources or all the logs from Guard Duty, Machi, AWS Inspector, um CloudTrail. You get logs from all those places and then see everything that is going on in real time. It's just like a single pane of glass that gives you visibility into all your environment. And we have AWS Inspector. AWS Inspector is just like a forensic tool within your AWS environment. You can use it to scan your environment for vulnerabilities and check for exposures. Also use it to find root cause analysis, especially when things something goes wrong. And okay, sorry, I think that is inspector. Sorry, is for AWS Inspector is for vulnerability management. Yeah, within you use it to scan for vulnerabilities within your EC2 instances, your container services, and ensure that any vulnerability that exists within those places, you catch them in real time. And the detective is for root cause analysis. You want to use it for forensic analysis and all those good stuff. And how do you ensure, or how does a security AWS security monitoring and response workflow, what does it look like? The first one is that you collect data. You collect data from CloudTrail, you collect data from CloudWatch, you collect data from your VPC flow log, and then you detect threats. GuardDuty collects the data. You can feed those data into GuardDuty. GuardDuty will help you to detect threats. And when it does that, it alerts you. What you will now do is come back to GuardDuty to aggregate your findings. Go to GuardDuty, take the logs, check previous logs, aggregate your findings. When you get all the logs, you investigate, you begin to look at each activity from the logs one by one to ensure that, okay, yeah, GuardDuty has alerted us because there is a threat. You want to make sure that, okay, it is an actual threat and not just a false positive or a false cry. That is what you do by responding. And if it is a threat in real, like a real threat, what you have to do is to remediate or mitigate. So you go, if there's an S3 that was exposed or it was actually a hacker trying to get in, you have to look at what they have done, configure your IAM policies, your security configurations, and review and improve, which is the last one. You look at what has happened and see how you make sure it doesn't happen in future. Now, we are looking at overall best practice when you are using AWS. I'm sorry, the time is already going. I don't want to keep us here more than 6 or 6:10. Now, what are the best practices when you want to using AWS? The first one is review security posture monthly. How can you do that? You can use AWS config. It is a low budget CSPM. CSPMs are tools. Most times companies use these tools as external tools. You have Prowler. Prowler is an open source. You have Scout Suite. This is another open source tool that you can use, or you can use config if you don't have access or you don't want to plug external tools into your AWS environment. Use AWS config to look at your security posture, look at all that has been configured all the while, and see how and in what ways you can properly configure them and see just your configuration over time before something bad happens. And train your teams. Security, the weakest link in security are humans. You have your tools, have your technologies, invest in security, and if your people or your workers, your users don't have basic security maturity or basic security hygiene, you will everything that you have built so far will eventually go down, even with all the money spent, because it is humans that would be the weakest link. Phishing and everything that happens, it is always humans that are the cause. And adapt zero trust principles. Every deployment in your AWS, trustless, always trustless, and always verify. Don't say, okay, yeah, I know For instance, let me use Abology for instance. Okay, Abology works at Authorite and he has been a great staff. In as much as he's a junior staff, I think we should just give him admin privileges or give him an administrator's account or administrator's role in his IAM. It is wrong. Always use zero trust principles. See everything as a potential cause of security breach so that you can be able to apply least privilege and minimize impacts of any security breach. And the last one is leverage automation. Automation helps you a lot. You want to use cloud formation. Cloud formation is an IAC tool that is AWS native. You want to make sure that all your stacks are deployed with cloud formation. It helps you to, during the configuration, you apply all the best practices. You can also have policy as code. Policy as code checks your code, checks your infrastructure as code configuration to make sure that they are following security policies that you have in place. And that with that automation, you are sure that you are not going to EC2 to deploy EC2, go to S3, create. No. Every security best practice has been deployed as an automation. You just scale them. Once you deploy the stack, the cloud formation stack, everything goes in. And if you want to also bring it down, you delete it, you bring down the stack, everything goes out. So you don't have manual configurations within your environment. If you're using Terraform, it is also very good. You can just use Terraform deploy to deploy everything securely and also use Terraform delete to delete everything securely. So automation is very important and also use automation for response. For instance, you can have Amazon and Lambda do certain work for you before you get in. You can have Event Bridge, you can have um, any other platform as a service automation tool that can help you on your behalf and to make sure that before you get there, maybe before your team gets alerted, Lambda can do a whole lot for you. And but in all, make sure that you have certain deployments within your environment automated. It will help you a whole lot. And this is the end of it. So I'm going to be taking a few questions and key takeaways before the end of it. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now.
All right. This has been so much of insight, and I believe that every participant of this webinar has been able to get one or two. Thank you very much, Ms. Diogo, for so much explanation and detailed insights about cloud security. You talked about the network security, the shared responsibility model, how we can protect most of our assets on cloud. And that has been so much helpful. And I believe every participant has been able to gain one or two from all of your lecture. So yeah, it's time for question. If you have any question for Ms. Diogo, I drop it in the comment section while she answers. But before then, Authorite has a big announcement, though it's not a big announcement anyways. It's been what we've been posting on social medias. It's an opportunity, a real opportunity that you get. And I'll be playing a video now that tells more about what Authorite is actually doing for businesses across Nigeria and even abroad, from anywhere you are even listening us from, because we believe that uh, we are in a global position, because AWS will tell you go global in minutes. So when you choose Authorite, of course you can always go global. So I'll be playing the video now. Kindly see, and I want to believe everyone can also listen to it. I would like Ms. Joko to also
Every
confirm.
business deserves to be seen and to thrive. At Arthurite Integrated, we believe that every entrepreneur has the potential to break through barriers and reach new heights. Imagine your business, fully visible and engaging with customers like never before. If you're ready to take the leap into the cloud but feel overwhelmed by the thought of not having a website, let us take that weight off your shoulders. Our first step? Building a stunning website for you, completely free. That's right. We want to ensure you have a strong online presence from day one. Visibility is the lifeblood of any business. Without it, even the best products can go unnoticed. That's why we're excited to introduce the Arthurite Business Visibility Drive. This initiative is designed to empower small businesses by enhancing their online presence and connecting them with their target audience. With our expert team, we'll guide you through every step of the process, from crafting a compelling website that reflects your brand's identity to optimizing it for search engines. We're here to ensure your business shines. But it doesn't stop there. We offer ongoing support, helping you navigate the digital landscape with confidence. Whether it's social media strategies, online marketing, or customer engagement, we're committed to your success. Join us on this journey. Let's transform your vision into reality and make your business a beacon in the digital world. Together, we can unlock your potential and drive your business forward. Your cloud journey starts here, and we can't wait to be part of it. Every
All right.
business deserves to be seen and
All right. Thank you very much, and I believe everyone can see that. That's what Authority is currently giving to businesses. A startup, you are delivering any service or product for people, and you have to show your brand in the digital space. You have to show your identity online. You can always partner with Authority for us to take you through the journey. We give you a free website at no or low cost, and from there we can give you some additional cloud services that you can add to your website and begin to even use the cloud. Cloud is quite simple, and we at Authorite are ensuring that we make it simple for you. So that's about that. So I just want to confirm that there are questions. um all right, we are expecting some questions anyways, but if there are no questions, I would like to ask some questions if that should work. Guys,
Are
okay,
you going
wait
to
a bit.
ask me? Avalanche, are you going to ask me or are you going to ask them?
No, of course. Okay, there's a question now. So someone is asking, how do we enforce least privilege? How to believe that least privilege is sex? So can you share? Can you answer that, please? Thank you.
Yes. Like I said, I talked about AWS having network segmentation is part of least privilege and also zero trust architecture. Now, when you want to enforce least privilege, one of the tools that you use is IAM. And how do you do this? If you can remember the definition I gave of IAM, you have to how you work or how you configure the IAM, the right users having access to the right resources at the right time for the right reasons. You want to make sure that if you ask all those questions, is this a right user to give access to this environment, and you have your check, you have it checked, yes, the user is part of our team, and you ask the next question, what access can this user have? For instance, if I am a junior staff, I'm a junior security staff, I shouldn't have access or I shouldn't have admin access. If I have admin access, I'm overprivileged. Why is it so? Is that if, for instance, my account gets hacked, the with the admin access, the account of the organization, the entire account can get hacked as well. You want to make sure that you use something we call role-based access control, meaning that if I only need access to do only one task in an AWS environment, I should not have more than that access to do that task. And I talked about roles. If you have, for instance, you have a service within your AWS account, or you have a tool that is plugged into your AWS account, what do you need to do? You may use the role to ensure that it is only use the role instead of creating, for instance, an IAM user. IAM identity, and the second one, which is the access key and secret access key for a tool. No, what you just need to do is give them roles so that at the point in time where they need to do or perform a task within your environment, they can just assume the role, and after that, they go back to their normal position. In that way, you can ensure that only what or the users or the roles or the services you only give them access to, only the only thing they need, and aside from that, they can't do anything else. That is how you enforce this privilege. And I see another question from you: the relationship between security and disaster recovery. I talked about the core tenets of cybersecurity when I talked about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Why the first two border so much on security, which is confidentiality, making sure that data is not seen by unauthorized parties, and integrity, making sure that data is not tampered or modified. The third one is availability, which is disaster recovery. And how does availability, if your website is not available, how does it affect security? It does not quite in like the real term affect security, but if a service is not available, it has impacted on security, because the core tenet of cybersecurity says that all services should be available all the time. And that is where disaster recovery comes in. Disaster recovery is just what is the plan that you have just in case that there is a security issue. How can you ensure that you come out of that issue? And that is the relationship now. You want to make sure that your your plans, you have a backup plan, you have another plan, you have a battle tested way of coming out of a security issue. It also happens in security as well. If you get breached or you get hacked, for instance, it's going to distort a lot of things. You might need to change some servers, you might need to do some forensics and all those good stuff. How can you quickly come out of that? So it's not even like it's not like a relationship per se. It is a part of security. I know that for people in operations like SREs, they also have disaster recovery, which is making sure the services come up. For security, you want to make sure that after a security breach, how can you come out of that breach? How can the business bounce back? And that is why disaster recovery is in the fourth or the fifth stage of incident response. When you're talking about security or responding to security breaches or incidents, disaster recovery is part of it. In a nutshell, it's just what are those practice or strategies or techniques you have in place to make sure that the business comes back, or the services comes back, or the tools comes back after there has been a security breach or a security incident. Please, pharmacist Alexis, if I answered your question well, you let me know. If I don't, please can you mention the place, and I'll do that. Okay, there's another question. Okay, there is another question. In a case where you want to give access to non-member of your team for some time, which is safer, user rule or policies? It is user. If it is a human being, it is a user. Why do I say so? You have to, when you create the IAM user access can be revoked, and when they are revoked, whoever that is using them will not be able to use them again. And in that IAM user, you can now use policies to list or what's just have everything they're supposed to do at a particular point in time. Like I said, since it's an external user, a non-member of your team, and they need to only work on EC2, or they are machine learning engineers and they need to get to Amazon Bedrock, or they need to get to SageMaker to train models and all those good stuff. You only give them, set their policies to only allow them to Bedrock or SageMaker according to what they do. And again, users too can use an assumed role. It all depends. Assumed role is also very good. At that point in time, they just assume the role. It is very, very okay. But it all depends on what the what works for the team. Personally, I would want to say roles, assume role. You can create an assume role for a user to be able to, but it all depends. You can just user IAM user to get the access key and the secret access key. It will work a whole lot. It is faster for the user, and then you can just have a life cycle. Once the user is done, once the time has come for the external user to stop using the service, you just revoke the access. And even if they still have the access key and the secret access key, they won't be able to log into the AWS environment again, and just give them limited policies. So policies would always be part of it, either for role. If you're going to use a role, policies will also be part of it. If you're going to use user, that is access key and secret access key, policies are also going to be part of it, because that is where you define the responsibility of the user according to their privilege or according to their role. I don't know if I answered your question, Prince. And pharmacist, if I answered your question correctly, please let me know.
All right, so let us know in the chat if that answers the question, Mr. Prince and pharmacist. I like this. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Jogo, for the time, for the insights that you've been able to share, and I believe participants have been able to find value from your answers and your lecture once again. And we're drawing the curtain. Okay, Prince confirms you've answered this question. So we've come to the end of this of today's session of today's series. And don't forget that Monday on Monday, we are continuing this three webinar series. So we want you back on stage for us to discuss prompt engineering. And on Tuesday, we'll be continuing with DevOps automation. And if you don't know anything about DevOps, on Tuesday is a great time for you to, gain more knowledge about what it means to be DevOps. So thank you very much for everyone that has joined us today. We appreciate your presence, and also a whole lot of thanks to Ms. Jogo, who has been able to give us insight around cloud security, shared us insight around network, around shared responsibility model, which some of the participants might not know of, or she has been able to reinforce their knowledge about it. Thank you very much, Ms. Diogo, and we are so honored to have you yet again. So thank you, everyone. See you on Monday for the next series of our 3-day webinar series. Bye.